Hi everybody, it's Juan again. Welcome to my second installment of the basic Fusion 360 tutorial. This time around we're going to talk a little bit about the Revolve tool to create revolved objects. So let's get started right away. I'm going to make my origin visible here. I'm going to tap here on the visibility icon next to origin to be able to visualize my planes. And I'm going to start a new sketch here. I'm going to select the Create Sketch tool here in the design panel. And I'm going to tap on either the front or right panel. And then I'm going to go, and if this is not selected by default for you, you might have gone orthogonal automatically. If you're not, you can click on this Look At icon here. I choose to always do it manually. I've changed that in my preferences. So I'm here looking at this view, and I'm going to start a sketch, and this sketch is going to define the profile of a planter that I am designing. So I'm going to go ahead and create a set of lines to start. I'm going to go to the line tool, so either go to create in line or just hit the shortcut key L. And I'm going to start a line here on my origin. So I'm going to go ahead and select that and drag a line. I'm going to snap it to be horizontal. And I'm going to give this an initial value of 100 millimeters. So it's going to be my first line here. I'm going to go back to the line tool by tapping L. And now I'm going to generate a line here at not any particular angle. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go back and snap this to the horizontal. And if you want to bring, let's say I want to also snap here to my center line, there's several ways I can do that. I can either first create a line to serve as a reference here. So I can create a vertical line here of whatever length. I'm going to hit Escape key to exit that because it wants to generate another line automatically. I'm going to tap on L again to get the line tool back, and then I can go back and snap to this line. Now, this is not going to find snapping place for me here, but I can actually do this, and that'll give me a chance to talk about a different tool. So let's say you have a line here. You don't need all of it. You can actually trim this line to length. You can go to Modify here. You can select Trim, and then you can tap on this Excess here, and it'll trim it back to where it needs to be. Now let's dimension this. Right? You can see right now there's a closed area here, but we really haven't defined the size or angle of these. So if we want this sketch to be fully defined, we need to add some dimensions here. So let's go to Create, and we're going to do Sketch Dimension or the shortcut D. We're going to select this particular line, and then I'm going to select the bottom here, and this is going to allow me to say what the angle between these two lines is. So I'm going to say this is 100 degrees. Excellent. And then I'm going to be able to say how long I would like this line to be. So I'm actually going to select the top here, and I'm going to select the origin, and I'm going to drag a horizontal measurement here. I'm going to say this is 150 millimeters from the bottom. Now, one important thing to note here when you're sketching, I'm going to hit the Escape key to exit dimensioning, is you start getting these small icons here. So here I have this one here. If I select different parts, I will start getting these small icons. So these icons are actually constraints, or some people also call them relationships. So constraints or relationships are going to define, of course, the relationship between two objects in the sketch. So either 2 points or 2 lines. So it can be, this one, for example, is a coincident relationship. So that means that these 2 points here are coinciding. So this line is coinciding with this other one. They can also be parallel, horizontal. You can actually select, let's say if you create just like a random line here, and you select that line, you actually go here to the sketch palette, to the constraint palette here on top, and then you can select, for example, let's see, where is it? Horizontal, vertical. So what it does, it'll actually make this line be fully vertical. So it's going to definitely define that this line is going to be vertical completely. So that's one relationship you can add to another. Let's say you have 2 lines here, and they're going at different angles. these two lines, you can select these and you can say these are actually parallel. So whatever you do to modify one of these lines, it'll modify the other line as well. So these are always going to be at the same angle. So if we now create some kind of reference between these two, let's see if we can add an angle here. See, you modify one of them, and both of them will change. So these will always be parallel. These have this relationship between each other. You can break relationships as well by selecting the small icon here for this constraint and hitting the delete key, and you get rid of it, and then these lines are now independent and they're not related at all. So play around with the constraints a bit, and you can definitely get away with some interesting stuff. All right, so now we've created this sort of half pot here, and we could revolve this around, but let's add a little bit more to it. So I'm actually going to add some ridges here to this particular shape at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a circle here. I'm going to tap the letter C, or you can go to the Create tab here inside the sketch and select a center diameter circle. And I'm going to snap onto this line, and I'm going to generate a circle here. We don't need to actually define the exact size just yet. So this circle, I've attached it to this line, but I still haven't told it its vertical position. I also haven't really defined the radius of it, so I can actually drag it. So let's add a dimension. I'm going to do create. I'm going to do sketch dimension. So I'm going to add a dimension to this particular circle. I'm going to say it's a 10 millimeter diameter circle. And then I'm going to specify that this circle is at 10 millimeters away from the bottom. Excellent. So if I look now at the selectable area here, I've created a bit of a ridge. Okay, so I'm going to add a couple more of these just here. With the same size, I'm going to enter the size this time around that are attached to this line. And again, I can add dimensions here that dictate the height at which they are from this base plate by just adding dimensions to them by tapping on the D key to add a sketch dimension, or going into the sketch menu and adding another dimension. Whoops, that was a little too little. This one's going to be 40 millimeters away. This particular one should be, let's see, 80 millimeters away. Actually, let's make that 70 so that they're equidistant. And I'm going to hit the escape key to exit my dimensioning. And this time around, you can see sort of the profile that I'm generating for my revolved object. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this inner area here that I've generated. And then I'm going to go to the solid tool panel, and I'm going to find this particular tool called Revolve. So its definition reads as this: revolves the sketch profile or planar surface around a selected axis. Select a profile or planar face, then select the axis to revolve around. So pretty simple. I'm going to select that either by opening this menu or by typing the letter S. I'm going to go back and do that again for you. You can type the letter S to pop out the shortcut search box, and I can search for Revolve. And select the solids revolve, which is the blue revolve. So the profile I've selected before, or you can click on that now. And then the axis is actually going to be my center line here, this vertical line that I've created. So when I do that, you can see that it'll generate this revolved object that looks like the designer planter that I'm trying to work on. You can do a full revolve, which is the default. You can also change the angle completely. You can type in a different angle here if you don't want. If you only want a partial revolve, if you want half of it, you can do 180 degrees, etc. Or you can just say full revolve and click OK. So this has generated revolved part based on any kind of sketch that has a profile and a center line. And just remember, this has to be a closed sketch for this to work. So if I go back and look at my sketch, you do have to have a closed area here. And some kind of center reference. Sometimes you can use the origin of the file. Sometimes you need to actually create a line, a reference line for yourself. All right. So I'm going to soften these transitions here a bit by using a fillet. So I'm going to go to the Modify menu. I'm going to select Fillet, or just I'm going to tap the letter F on my keyboard. And I'm going to select these lines here, and I'm going to also soften these a little bit. So I'm going to select these here, and let's see. Let's try a 5mm radius. Maybe that's a little bit too much. Let's try 2.5mm radius between these. I'm going to significantly soften these transitions here and create a nice smooth surface for these ridges that I've created. Excellent. Okay. I'm also maybe going to soften the bottom of this. I'm going to add another fillet. I'm going to tap the letter F. You can choose to fillet an individual edge. You can just choose a face, and every single edge that's connected to that face will have the same fillet applied to it. So sometimes you have the same result. You don't have to go pick a bunch of different edges, but your results may vary depending on your design. Excellent. Okay, now let's empty out this pot and generate the inner volume for it. You can, for example, draw a circle here and do an extrude to generate a hole. The other way you can go around this is to actually create a shell, or to shell out this part to a specific wall thickness. And this tool is found here in the Modify tab. So I'm going to open up the Modify tab. I'm going to select the Shell tool. So this removes material from the inside of a part. So now you get to select faces or a body. If you were to want to generate a shell, an enclosed shell that has no opening, you'd have to go and find the body, this particular body here in the tree. Let's see if we can get that. And then you'd be able to select that body and generate a fully enclosed shell. If you select faces here, these are the faces that will remain open. So in our case, we want to select this top face, which is the face that's going to remain open, and then we're going to add a thickness to it. So I'm going to say this part is going to be 8mm thick. So when I say it's going to be 8mm thick, it's going to process this, and you can see the shell will actually shell a very uniform wall, taking into account all of your features. So if you have an error with your shell operation, and it just throws an error because of your design, it means that maybe you have some kind of feature that is too rough. So that's partially why I also chose to fillet these features here before I did the shell. If you have very complicated features like this, it might be worthwhile to actually shell your object before and then go and cut these features in. So one way you can do that, and I'm actually going to do that for you here. Let's say I want to have a feature that I wanted to have on the outside, but I didn't want to have on the inside of the part. You can do that too. So let's say we're going to create a new sketch, and again we're going to choose one of our planes here. And let's say I wanted to add a lip to this part. I can come and I can create a circle here. Say I want the circle to have 10mm diameter. And now I can come back and give this a particular place in space. Let's say you're 150mm from the origin in the vertical direction, and you're 125mm from the origin. All right, so I'm going to select this now, and now I'm going to create another revolve. So I'm going to go back to the Solids tab here. I'm going to the Revolve tool again. And this might be hidden inside your Revolve top. Remember, if you want to add things to your top toolbar, you can come to this little dotted menu here and say pin to toolbar, and it's going to add it to the top. If you use it often, you might want to have it there. So I'm going to do revolve. Then the profile is of course going to be that small circle that I created. Axis is going to be, in this case, our center line. So depending on the type of operation that you choose here in the Revolve menu, so you have different options here in the Revolve panel. So you have cut, you have join, so you can add this bead of material. Let's say you wanted to create an edge around your planter, you can do that. You can also go ahead and cut things out with the Revolve. So a Revolve can also be used to cut away at a part. So this could be an interesting way to add a bevel to this particular part. So if we do OK, you can see I've added a very interesting bevel here on the topmost edge of my planter. All right, let's try something else. Let's try doing a circular pattern around this particular object. So I'm going to do a new sketch, and I'm going to choose the side plane here. So let's say I want to cut this piece out. So I'm going to draw something here that creates a cut here on this particular side. So one thing I'm going to do is actually want to create a slot, center to center slot. So I'm going to tap there. So the first thing I do is I will specify where the center of one of the sides of the slot is. I'm going to specify where the other side of the slot is, and then I'm going to drag my mouse around, and I'll be able to specify the size of the slot, the radius or the diameter of this slot. So I'm going to say this is an 8mm diameter slot. And of course I can go and define this with dimensions and tell exactly what it to be. For this particular example, just because we're doing this really fast, I'm going to leave this undimensioned as it is. It's not the best practice, but we don't want to waste a lot of time here. So, okay, we've sketched this around. And one thing we do need to do, we need to create a line here that actually splits this slot in half. So let's actually take this line and we're going to just overlay a line there, and then we're going to our modify tab and we're going to say extend. We're going to hover over this line here. You're going to see this red section is what's going to be extended, and then I'm going to extend also this way. And now I've split the oh wait. Okay, so I'm going to go to the Modify tab. I'm going to say Extend. I'm going to extend this line here. This red section is what's going to get added. And now I've effectively split the slot into two parts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select half of this slot, and I'm going to create a revolve. I'm going to go back to the Solid tab here. So I'm going to go back to the Revolve tool. The profile is this half of this slot that was selected. Then the axis is actually going to be this center line for the slot. So you can see that it's generating this pill-shaped cut here on the sidewall of the planter. So that's a pretty interesting feature that's going to generate an interesting texture on the planter. So now what I want to do is actually I want to take this feature that I just did and I want to copy this all around. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a circular pattern using this particular feature that I just created. So I go to the Create menu, I go to Pattern, and I select Circular Pattern. The pattern type we're going to choose is Features. So then the objects to choose, we're going to go down to our timeline, and we're going to choose this last revolve that we used, and then the axis of revolution again can be anything that is concentric to the piece. So you can choose this edge, you can choose this the origin of the vertical axis of the origin, you can choose this particular face here. Anything that is concentric is going to work. So now we all need to specify the number of copies that this needs to have by typing it here into this box. So let's say we do, let's try 30 copies, or maybe 40 copies. And the more copies you have, the closer together they are. Another thing that's interesting is you'll see that when you create any kind of pattern, you'll see these check boxes here. You can actually uncheck these and have instances that are missing. Let's say you wanted to add a logo here to this side. You can actually say I'm going to skip a couple of these so I don't have a full-on pattern all around by just deselecting these check boxes here. So I'm going to say OK. And then we're going to create a circular pattern with the feature that I had first created. It's just going to distribute it all around. Fantastic. So play around with the Revolve tool. It's something really useful. You'll find numerous ways to use it, not only to create objects like this, but also to add interesting features to the objects you already made.